And we're starting with breaking news. The Associated Press reporting Major League Baseball is relocating its All-Star Game to Denver.
It will be played at Coors Field. This after it was pulled from Atlanta over Georgia voting laws. And Governor Greg Abbott was angry by the MLB's decision to move. So today he turned down an invite to throw out the first pitch at the Texas Rangers home opener.
Now Houston Democrats are speaking out against proposed voting changes right here in Texas. Adam Bennett taking a closer look at the boycotts and backlash over the voting laws fight.
Republicans say these bills will help detect and punish fraud and help protect election integrity. Democrats say they're a solution to a non-existent problem that will suppress votes.
We all saw what happened in Georgia.
This afternoon in Houston, this CEO from Austin criticized two Texas voting bills.
If Senate Bill 7 and House Bill 6 pass in the Texas legislature, it will hurt our economy.
Now Democratic lawmakers are calling on other business owners to follow his lead.
What we're seeing right now is voter suppression happening in real time.
House Bill 6 would limit an election judge's power to expel poll watchers. It would also require people assisting disabled voters with their ballot to provide an ID, list their relationship to the voter, and say why they're helping. Senate Bill 7 would limit extended early voting hours, ban drive-through voting, and allow partisan poll watchers to record voters who get help filling out their ballots if they believe it's unlawful. Both bills make it illegal for election officials to proactively send out mail-in ballot applications.
The bills that are going forward right now in the Texas legislature would make it impossible or even illegal to do the things that we did.
Senator Paul Betancourt of Houston is one of SB 7's authors. He told me tonight claims at the press conference were, quote, preposterous and political theater. Former Republican House candidate Louis LaRota worries about the taxpayer cost of staffing longer early voting hours.
If you really want to get people out to vote, make it a holiday.
He's also a business owner who likes the bills.
Somehow our businesses would be hurt. I don't see that. The only way I see that is if this is used as a public relations piece to bully other businesses into complying.
KHOU political analyst Bob Stein believes Republicans nationwide are filing similar bills to convince their base that elections will be fair and honest.
Because one of the things we learned from the runoff election in Georgia is if people don't believe in the integrity of the election, they won't participate.
Both SB 7 and HB 6 are now in the Texas House. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick plans to hold a press conference on these bills tomorrow morning. Len?
We'll see what happens then. Thank you, Adam.